Moths formed my face underwater, scratching silently. The classroom desks were growing hair, coarse, wiry strands like animal fur, catching the foggy lavender light filtering through the high, grimy windows. Each desk was a patchwork of greyish follicles, some stiff as bristles, others soft as dead grass. I knelt beside one, my fingers tracing the rough texture. Hair on furniture. The thought was absurd, yet the air smelled of damp wool and something older, like forgotten linen. My heart hammered against my ribs, but not in my chest. It was a wet rustle, deep in my stomach, as if my insides had rearranged themselves. The sensory anomaly was constant now. A dull, nauseating pressure that made my skin feel too tight. I wiped cold sweat from my brow, slick as oil. It left a faint, greasy residue. The can sat on the desk, a dented tin cylinder, its lid crimped shut. I'd found it in the hospital's non-human wing, where they kept the creatures who didn't fit in any category. The can's lid crunched under my thumb, a sound like a thumbbone splitting. Peepee, a sound, alive, impossible. The hair on the desks whispered against the floor, a dry, papery rustle. Peep, it echoed from the can, a tiny frantic call. My fingers found the seam, cold metal biting into my skin. The cat padded closer, its movements silent, a shadow against the charcoal floor. Its eyes wept liquid gold, hardening into flakes on my wrist. Drip, tufty, drip, drip. I each drop hardened instantly into a tiny smooth battery. I watched the gold tears harden into miniature power cells, their surfaces gleaming faintly under the lavender light. The can twin sang, a sound like wet parchment tearing, a sound I'd heard in a dream. The song the desks whispered. This isn't proof, I thought. This is the filing. The bureaucratic system was closing in, filing me away like a document. The can's lid snapped shut again. A sharp crack that vibrated through the desk. Shatter. Glass footsteps echoed inside the tin. I heard it, a low, resonant growl, steady as a clock, vibrating the floorboards. The dog was outside the room, growling from the hallway, its sound thick and physical. The hair on the desk whispered the song again, a dry, insistent murmur. I focused on the can, ignoring the cat's gold tears, ignoring the growl, ignoring the whispering hair. I had to find the proof. The baby bird inside the can, how could it be alive? It was sealed. This isn't proof, I thought. This is the filing. The can's lid snapped shut with finality, a sound like a key turning in a lock. The baby bird's peep became the sound. It wasn't a peep anymore. It was the sound, the one that would shatter my soul. It was the sound that caused permanent madness. The can's lid snapped shut, and the baby bird's peep became the sound that would shatter my soul. The can's lid snapped shut, and the baby bird's peep became the sound that would shatter my soul. The can's lid snapped shut, and the baby bird's peep became the sound that would shatter my soul. The air tasted of burnt sugar, and something older, like the inside of a pocket that had held a dead man's coin for centuries. My fingers curled around the edge of the desk, and the coarse hair there twitched, a living thing, as if sensing my hesitation. I'd expected resistance, but not this, skin splitting along my knuckles in thin, jagged sheets, peeling back like the bark of a tree that had been cut too deep. The fragments didn't fall. They unraveled, threads of greyish-white flesh dissolving into static, a crackle that stung my palms. Foof, I told myself, foof, this is proof. But the static hissed. Whoof, no, this is the filing. The folder materialized between us, not from nowhere, but from the air itself, as if the space had been holding it all along. It was paper-thin, but the edges breathed, a slow, wet inhale that made the lavender fog ripple. The sound wasn't a whisper. It was a hum, low and resonant, vibrating the hair on the desks into a chorus of dry, papery voices. My name was carved into the spine in letters that weren't letters but something closer to scars raised and glistening like fresh stitching. I slammed my fist down again. The desk screamed. A sound like wet parchment tearing, and the hair erupted in a storm of wiry strands, tangling around my wrist, yanking me forward. My skin split wider this time, the edges curling inward like the pages of a book, being devoured by its own ink. I could see the static now, a blue-grey haze clinging to the wounds, and it smelled of copper, thick and metallic, the taste flooding my mouth before I even realized I was biting my lip. The folder unfolded itself. It didn't open like a door. It unfolded, as if it had been compressed for years, layers of itself pressing outward in a slow, deliberate motion. The pages, if they were pages, were translucent, almost liquid, shifting between solid and mist. And there in the center was Petey and Mice, not as I remembered. Not as I remembered. Floating in a hospital bed, pale as the fog. My chest cavity split open like a cracked eggshell, the organs inside suspended in a thick, syrupy fluid. My eyes were still there, but they weren't mine. They were hollow, filled with the same lavender haze that clung to the room, and when they shoe-focused on me, I felt something inside my stomach lurch. Not a heartbeat, but a gear, grinding slow and deliberate, like a clock winding down. The cat was there before I saw it. One moment the floor was just charcoal and shadow. The next its fur was a living thing drinking in the light, its eyes weeping gold again. It didn't lick the folder, it pressed itself against it, and the gold tears hardened instantly, not into batteries this time, but into something sharper needles, pins the edges of a key. Charge, Miles Thompson, the static whispered, and the words tin-burned into my wrist, not as ink, but as heat, as if my skin had been branded from the inside. The hair on the walls hummed again, the melody sharp and wrong, like a music box playing a song you'd forgotten you knew. My stomach twisted. No, not twisted. Fufurled. The gear inside me turned, and the floor vibrated, a deep resonant thrum that made my teeth ache. The dog's growl was back, thicker now, vibrating through the floorboards, but it wasn't outside anymore. It was sweaty inside the desk. Inside I mime. The hair whispered the melody again, and this time the sound shattered something glass, maybe, or bone, and the footsteps came, not from the hallway, from under the desk, from foot inside my own body. The skin on my arms twin-peeled upward, not in strips, but in sheets, like the bark of a tree shedding its winter coat. The static crackled louder, and the folder's edges cut into my wrist, deep and clean, a line of black ink bleeding into the gold. It stained, spreading in thin, jagged veins across the folder, and the pages flipped themselves faster now, a blur of lavender and shadow. The cat's eyes widened, and for the first time I saw for teeth. Not gold, but black, needle-thin, and they clicked together like a lock snapping shut. The gear in my stomach, so stopped he, and then the hair on the wall sang. The growl was a vibration in the bones of the room, a sound that didn't come from a throat, but from the seams where the walls had been stitched together. Too tight, too uneven, the stitches unraveling in slow, wet bursts. I knelt, fingers pressing into the desk's surface, and the wood fodder breathed against my palms, damp and slick as a fish's belly. The hair there wasn't hair at all. It was thread, unspooling from the grain, a nest of grey filaments that twitched at my touch, coiling around my wrist like a bracelet of worms. Beneath the desk, the floor wasn't wood. It was Krunglasser, not broken, not shattered. A lattice of jagged veins. Veins that pulsed in time with the weight of my body, the air thickening between us like syrup. The cat was already there, its body a shadow stitched with gold, its eyes weeping not tears but molten wires, dripping onto the glass in slow, deliberate drops. Drip-poo. The sound wasn't water, it was a spark, a tiny fushtith of electricity, and the glass trihisty. Where it touched, the shards retracting just enough to let the gold sink in, hardening into something solid, something fun-sharp. I didn't see the dog until the growl became a pulse. It was under the desk, a shape of black and silver, its ribs visible through the glass like the bars of a cage. No fur, no skin, just facets hyversates, hundreds of them catching the lavender fog and refracting it into 1,000 tiny cuts. Its eyes, if they were eyes, were the worst part. They didn't blink. They counted tid, ticking upward, 1, 2, 3, the seconds bleeding together like oil on water. Its tongue wasn't red. It was twinklier, a blade of glass folded in half, and when it licked the air, the sound was the snap of a bone underfoot, the crunch of teeth on ice. I should have run. But the desk whispered my name. Not in words. In the way the hair unraveled, in the way the glass twin moaned when I exhaled. Thompson, Thupumson, Thompson, Thompson. The dog's head turned. No neck, just a seam of black where its spine should have been, and its eyes locked onto mine. The counting stopped. The glass twin shuddered, and then we licked the air between us. My fingertip was there 1 second. A nail, a cuticle, a manicured edge. The next, twin fragmented. Not into blood, not into bone, into static. A burst of blue-grey pixels, dissolving into the dog's open mouth. Its jaw didn't chew. It absorbed, the shards of me vanishing into the dark like sugar in coffee, and the dog's pulses spiked to V in a sharp, glassy heartbeat that echoed in my stomach, a gear turning too fast, too self-hungry. The cat's tail lashed, the gold tears splattering against the glass, and the floor foofitch. The sound of 1,000 needles dropped onto a metal sheet. The dog's legs unfolded, not straight, not right, but at angles that shouldn't exist, the joints bending inward like the pages of a book someone had pressed too hard. Its paws weren't paws, they were sisandans, 5 fingers each, tipped with glass nails that 2 feet clicked together. As it pushed itself forward, I should have screamed, but my throat was full of static, full of the sound of the dog's pulse, full of the way the hair on the walls soon sang. It wasn't a melody. It was a footy recording, a voice that wasn't a voice playing a song I'd heard in a dream I couldn't remember. The dog's mouth opened wider, and the glass footy wept, a thin, silver stream of liquid light dripping onto the floor where the cat waited. The cat didn't flinch, it fringed in. The gold tears hardened into needles. Not golden needles, not black needles. Clear needles, like the inside of a seashell, like the edges of a mirror someone had shattered on purpose. The dog's tongue flicked out again, and this time it wasn't my finger it caught. It was the cat's tail. The gold cracked, a spiderweb of fractures, and the cat hissed, not in pain, but in food recognition. The dog's eyes flashed, not once, but 3 times, like a signal, like a code, and then the glass footed moved. Not the dog, the floor. The entire surface of it, a sheet of fractured light. 2 filling back like the skin of a fruit that had been left too long in the sun. Beneath it wasn't dirt, it wasn't wood. It was a footimaw, a circle of black that wreathed, slow and deliberate, the edges of it lined with teeth, not glass teeth, not metal teeth, but tivesi, thousands of them, each one thinner than a needle, each one thinner than a needle, each one footin vibrating, with the sound of the dog's growl. The cat's eyes widened. The dog's pulse stuttered. And then the glass snapped all at once, in waves. A crack here, a shatter there, the sound of 1,000 wine glasses being dropped from a great height. The dog's body fully unfolded like a origami crane, its glass limbs clicking into place, each joint locking with a sound like a key turning in a rusted lock. The moor beneath the floor fully expanded, a perfect circle, and the hairs on the edges twitched, fully beaching for the light. I should have moved, but my legs weren't mine anymore. They were shooter, turning in time with the dog's pulse, turning in time with the song the walls were singing. The cat's tail whipped forward, the gold tears hardening into a blade, and the dog relunged, not at me, not at the cat, but at the kofler floor, its glass hands pressing Creve into the moor, the teeth clicking together like a zipper being sealed. The first drop of blood wasn't mine. It was the dog's, a single, silver bead, rolling down its glass flank, dissolving into the air before it hit the ground. The cat twat, a sound like a radio tuned to a dead station, and the dog's pulse tightly accelerated. The gears in my stomach, grinding faster. The song in the walls, sharpening wah, the hairs on the floor raching. And then the glass time broke. Not the floor. My body unzipped, not along the seams of my clothes, not along the lines of my skin, but along the hovetivity of myself. The static thwinting, back like the bark of a tree, like the pages of a book someone had torn apart. The dog's mouth, sooty opened wider, and the cat leapt. Not at the dog, not at the moor, but at the 20 light, its claws scrabbling against the air, the gold tears hardening into a cage, a prison twee. The gears in my stomach, stopped. And then the dog's pulse, matched mine 1, 2, 3. The glass shattered, and the floor breathed in. The music box was small enough to fit in my palm. Its surface smooth as a baby's skull, carved from something that wasn't wood or bone or metal, something fundy old foul. The seams where the lid met the base weren't seams at all, but scars, thin and silver, pulsing faintly like veins. I pocketed it without thinking, the weight of it settling against my ribs like a held breath. The air in the classroom was thick, not with dust, but with the scent of wet parchment, and something twin sweeter, like honey left too long in the sun. My fingers twitched. The cat was already there, its body a smear of charcoal against the foggy lavender, its eyes leaking not tears, but that twenty gold, thick and viscous, hardening into beads on its fur before they could fall. It didn't watch me, it watched the box. The desks around us were wrong. Not just the hair-thin, grey filaments unspooling from the grain, twitching like drowned weeds, but the way they listened. The music box hadn't played yet, but the hair on the nearest desk shivered, a sound like wet paper being torn. I should have known then. Should have turned and walked away before the song started, before the hair began to forcing. But I didn't. The first note was a whisper, not from the box, but from the walls. A murmur, a voice that wasn't a voice, the same melody I'd heard in the dream. The one where the ocean wasn't water, but 50 purple, where the waves were teeth, where I drowned in something that wasn't salt. The music box opened on its own, the lid creaking like a hinge that hadn't been used in centuries. Inside, not gears, not music, but a fakaderd. A baby thing, black feathers fluffed like soot, its beak open, its eyes unblinking and funrong too round, too smooth, like polished river stones. It didn't chirp, it faculty watched. And then the song began, not from the box, from the hair. The filaments on the desks vibrated, each one a string in an orchestra that wasn't playing for me. The melody coiled around my skull, familiar and funrong. The same notes that had woken me from the dream, the same notes that had made my stomach fully sickened, like a second heart. The cat's tail lashed, the gold tears sun-plinking against the desktop, hardening into something like 40 batteries, small and cylindrical, humming faintly with a sound like a radio tuned between stations. It licked the seam of the music box, the gold crackling where its tongue touched, and the box tongue beeped. Hoot, ons, twice a sound like a heart monitor flatlining. The bird in the box flapped when flapped, its wings a blur of black, and the song twin stopped. The hair twin pulled. Not the desk hair, not the wall hair, or fuffen mean. A strand fine as spider silk, wrapped around my ankle before I could react. It wasn't hair. It was swift thread, wet and warm, clinging to my skin like a leech. I yanked my leg back, but the thread stretched, unraveling from the desk in a slow, deliberate motion, the sound like a needle being pulled through fabric. The cat didn't move. It didn't blink. It just I watched, the gold tears dripping onto the music box, the metal foofened hissing where they touched. The box tivid beeped again, a sharp, metallic clickade, and the song reversed. Not played backward, unplayed backward. Unplayed fiffinty, the notes weren't notes anymore. They were thigh teeth, sharp and jagged, scraping against the inside of my skull. The classroom fun shuddered. The desks were groaning like something alive. The hair on them forcing into shapes that weren't shapes. The bird in the box is screaming. Not with a voice, but with the sound of quinglasse breaking. The cat's eyes, footened. The gold hardening into something toid solid, something toy sharp, and the music box switched, snapped, open inside. The bird was gone. In its place a hamdu, not a hand. A claw. 5 fingers of blackened bone, each one tipped with a needle of gold, the same gold as the cat's tears, the same gold that Tweety burned when I looked at it. The box defeat Tweet won last time, a sound like a gunshot in a cathedral, and the thread tightened around my ankle. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just watched with it as the gold claw swid reached, for me, as the cat twin purred, as the desks whispered, the song backward, as the classroom fwin shattered, and the music box fwinty opened again. This time inside there was nothing, just the sound of fwin shattering. The clipboard doesn't fall. It piven floats is, suspended in the air like a wound that won't close, its edges frayed with something that isn't paper, something fully alive, the fibers writhing like the legs of drowned things. My skin prickles, not from cold, but from the weight of it pressing against my ribs, though it never touches me. The butterflies aren't frozen. They're preserved. Their wings stiff as parchment, their bodies the color of bruised twilight, landing in slow, deliberate arcs across my arms, my collar, my hands. They don't stick. They fermelt. Their edges softening into something like wax, their black veins spreading like ink in water, staining my skin with the color of old bruises. I don't flinch. I don't breathe. I just watch as the first one dissolves into my wrist, the warmth of it seeping into my veins like a memory I can't place. The floor isn't shaking. My stomach is. The heartbeat isn't mine. It's the classroom's, a slow, wet tweethard echoing through the walls, the desks, the hair that grows from them in thick, greasy strands. The sound vibrates my teeth, my fillings humming like tuning forks. I press a palm to my chest. Nothing, the heartbeat is in my sugat. A second pulse, a third, each one a hammer blow against my ribs. The cat doesn't move. It doesn't need to. Its eyes are already on me, the gold leaking in slow, thick rivulets down its face, pooling on the desktop in glistening drops. The butterflies land in the liquid, dissolving instantly, their bodies absorbed, their wings folding into the gold like paper into fire. The cat flicks its tail. The gold hisses, not like steam, but like a battery charging, a low electric tweebuzzard filling the air. The clipboard shreds to it, not all at once. First, the edges curl back like the pages of a book that's been left too long in the rain. The fibers split, not into threads, but into flies per skies. Smaller this time, their wings translucent, their bodies the color of a bruise that won't fade. They drift toward me, landing on my shoulders, my neck, my lips. I don't taste anything. It just isn't paper. This is something that Tuvi writes itself, something that Tuvi erases here before it lands. The butterflies don't stay. They unwrite, their bodies dissolving into the air, leaving behind only the scent of old parchment, and something toying sweeter, like honey left to ferment in the dark. The cat Twipursa. Not with its mouth, with its mouth. The gold hardens in the corners, forming into small, cylindrical shapes, like batteries, like the ones I used to collect as a kid, the ones that powered the flashlights in the storm cellars. The cat reaches out, its paw not touching but pulling, the gold stretching toward the clipboard, the fibers of it wrapping around the cat's fingers like thread around a needle. The clipboard screamsy, not with sound. With twint I light a flash of purple, a color that isn't a color, a shade that burns the back of my eyes. The cat Two Swallows said. The clipboard whole, its jaws not moving, its throat not opening, the gold twin melting into its fur, its skin, its quin bones. The cat twid becomes a battery. The cat twi becomeseth the heartbeat. I step back, my foot lands on footglasse, not the floor, not the desk, thuit inside me. The sound isn't a crunch. It's a shatter, a digital fucklich. My leg fragmenting, like a screen corrupted mid-buffer, the bones not breaking but toffee unraveling, the muscle not tearing but fuffing, dissolving into static, the blood not red but purple, thick and viscous, dripping onto the glass in slow, wet tweet beepsy. The cat doesn't look away, it doesn't blink, it just blink watches, its eyes now solid gold, now free batteries beef, now fin nothing. The heartbeat isn't in my stomach anymore. It's in the footy walls, in the footy desks, in the saya, a slow, wet through that matches the footy beep of my own failing heart. The cat reacts for me, not with its paw, with its paw. The gold torse from its eyes, not dripping but flowing, a river of liquid metal, a current that pulls at my skin. My thoughts said. The butterflies land on the gold, dissolving instantly, their bodies feeding. Itty-twatty powering it. The cat's purr now a forty-hum, now a fush song, now the sonsu of my own shwati stopping. I don't scream, I don't move. I just twitch-watch as the gold twitches for my face, as the cat's swifun mind reaches for mine, as the twiffy for my heart becomes the twiffy fukuzik box, as the shatter of my leg becomes the shatter of the world, and the cat twiffuties. The clipboard wasn't a clipboard anymore. It had 20 teeth, not like a saw, not like a blade, like a mouth, the edges of its frayed, living fibers parted, not in a tear, but in a torn yawn, the inner flesh glistening with something thick and wet, something that wasn't ink or blood or even sap. It was the color of bruised lavender, the same shade bleeding from the walls, from the desks, from the tweed hair that grew in thick, greasy ropes from the wood, from the ceiling, from the floor. The air smelled like wet parchment. Like the inside of a book left too long in the dark, like the moment before a match strikes but never lights. I didn't scream, I didn't tree-breathe. The sound came first, not from the clipboard, not from the cat, but from Poin Mai. A screech, not of metal, not of pain, but of twiffy-data, of a hard drive spinning down, of a voice that wasn't mine but had been mine for years, decades, lifetimes, the song. The one that had been in my dreams, the one that had woken me in cold sweats, the one that had made the walls swifum-suhum. It wasn't music. It was a footy bite. The clipboard's jaws clamped down, not on air, not on flesh, but on flesh sound. The notes weren't played, they were extracted, dragged from my skull like teeth from a trap. I felt it in my teeth, my fillings vibrating, my molars to chew it, as if they'd been drilled. The lavender bled from the walls in slow, wet rivulets pooling on the desk, on the cat's fur, on the fruity butterflies, the ones that weren't frozen, weren't dead, but preserved, their wings stiff as parchment, their bodies the color of old bruises. They landed on the gold that leaked from the cat's eyes, the gold that twin-charged, that twin-batistide like a battery overloading. The cat didn't lick it. It hit it, the clipboard sung, not with its mouth, with its suavity entire surface, the fibers vibrating, the lavender twin pulsing like a heartbeat, like the one in my stomach, the one that wasn't mine, the one that belonged to the food classroom, to the 4D desk set, to the hair. The sound wasn't in my ears. It was in my suffit bones in the marrow, in the suffin cavities, in the hollows where my teeth should have been. My jaw unhinged, not like a snake's, not like a monster's, but like a foot door, like a futrip. The muscles dissolving, the ligaments footy unraveling, the sound spilling out in wet, rustling sighs. The cat watched, its eyes weren't gold anymore. They were so purple. The same shade as the walls, the same shade as the blood that dripped from my leg, the blood that wasn't red but sweet lavender, that twivip-titi like a failing machine, like a heart monitor flatlining. The cat's tongue wasn't pink. It was siphantalic, the same color as the gold, the same color as the suffin tears that rolled down its cheeks, not wet but tiffened electric, not liquid but toughened torrent, charging the air, charging. I stepped back. My foot landed on footglasser, not the floor, not the desk. Inside me, the sound wasn't a crunch. It was a foosh shatter, a foofut. My leg fragmenting, like a corrupted file, the bones not breaking but fooshipping, the muscle not tearing but surfy peeling back, the blood not dripping but twippling, not red but twirpaloo, not sticky but twirvithick, like honey left too long in the sun. The cat didn't move. It didn't need to. Its eyes were on me, not watching, but toffee recording, tofiling the lavender spreading from my fingers, from my tom palm. The same shade as the walls, the same shade as the 40 hair, the same shade as the songshong. My hand wasn't mine anymore. It was sivant lavender, not stained, not painted, for fully grown. The skin hadn't changed, the fush hat, the veins weren't blue. They were suey purple, pulsing, throbbing. The same rhythm as the classroom's heartbeat, the same rhythm as the 40 beep of my failing heart. The cat twirped, not with its mouth, with its mouth. The gold tuven died, forming into small cylindrical shapes, like footy batteries, like the ones I'd collected as a kid, the ones that powered the flashlights in the storm cellars. It reached for me, not with its paw, but with its paw might. I didn't flinch, I didn't breathe. I just free-watched, as the lavender spread, as the footy hair grew from my bones, as the footy desks, it tootied, as the footy walls, sighed, as the twisun became my heartbeat, as the footy became the footy battery, as the footy classroom became the sooty file, as the file became the thooty sound dead, as the footy sound became the thooty bite, as the thooty bite became the thooty dend, and my other hand turned lavender too. The air smelled like a hospital that had been holding its breath for too long. Not the antiseptic bite of rubber gloves and alcohol wipes, but something older, something that had been preserved, like the formaldehyde tang of a specimen jar left open too long, like the sour breath of a corpse that had been waiting just past the edge of consciousness. My lungs burned with it, but I didn't inhale. I couldn't. The moment my body hit the floor, the world dwindled like a map of every death I'd ever died. I remembered for this, not the classroom, not the cat, not even the clipboard with its tuven mouth. I remembered the forethought. The way my spine had unzipped, like a bad stitch, the way my ribs had peeled back from my chest like wet paper, the way the floor had followed me whole. And then I remembered 40 before. That, the ship. The Thor said, ship. Its hull groaning like a dying animal, the waves black with something that wasn't water but foot, inkworth, thick and slow, choking the crew as they tried to scream. And before that, always before the jar. The music box inside the jar playing a tune that wasn't a song but a foot wound, a sound that made the teeth ache and the fillings weep. And before that, the classroom shuddered, not the walls, not the desks, the forehair. It wasn't growing anymore, it was voice-singing, a whisper but not a voice. A though texture, like the sound of 1,000 fingers dragging across parchment, like the thuven raveling of thread from a spool. It wasn't words, it was sufidita, the kind that scrapes against the inside of your skull when the Wi-Fi cuts out, when the screen fun glitches zed and the pixels suvidid. It was the fusa, sound of being suid rejected, not failed, not denied, but tusi filed away, stamped with a date and a name and a full label. That wasn't mine. The cat moved. Not like a cat, like a whole mechanism be. Its paws didn't pad. They clicked. Each step a small, precise to snap. Like the hinge of a door swinging open. It wasn't walking toward me. It wasn't walking toward me. It was twindy nesting. The clipboard wasn't on the desk anymore. It was in its paws, and it was sooty licking. The tears from its eyes, not gold anymore, but twiffy purple, thick and slow, like syrup left too long in the sun. The clipboard's mouth yawned again, but this time it wasn't empty. This time it was waiting. I felt it before I heard it. The footy vibe. Not a heartbeat, not a machine. The sodi sound of a file being save-tyved. The sodi-typhy ping of an email sent to the wrong address. The soy static that hums just before a broadcast cuts to black. It wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from the walls. My stomach flinched, not with hunger, not with pain, but with the foreign wrongness of an organ that didn't belong there. A second heart pulsing in reverse. A 40 clock winding down. The hair screamed, "Not in my ears, in my bonesy!" The desks groaned. The fibers stretching tie. The lavender oozy dripping like wax from a candle, but not warm. Footy coldy. The cat's tongue wasn't pink. It was twindy black, split down the middle. Not a fork, but a foot zipper, unraveling as it tasted the air. It didn't lick the clipboard. It twin-fed. The gold wasn't dripping from its eyes anymore. It was twin peeling back, layer after layer like the skin of an onion, but not white. Not yellow, purple. The same shade as the walls, the same shade as the footy hair, the same shade as the footy sound that was toydy tearing me apart. I didn't scream, I didn't creathed. I just had watched as the clipboard's mouth grew, not wider, not deeper, longer. A tooth. Not like a fang, not like a needle, but like a fooky, smooth and foot and shiny. Not white but total lavender. The same color as the foot and stain spreading across my fingers. The same color as the foot of light flickering in the cat's eyes. It wasn't a tooth. It was a hooky. It wasn't for biting. It was for 20 filing tinned. The cat twippered. Not with its mouth, with its twiffy shadow. The gold hardened, forming into small, cylindrical shapes, not batteries, not bullets, but twiffy, spinning in slow, deliberate twiffy lobsy, charging the air, charging primitive. The hair whispered again, but this time it wasn't a sound. It was a forename. Thompson, 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 the woman, not the one I remembered, not the one I dreamed, the one that had been shoi-stunned, the one that had been shredded, the clipboard's mouth closed off. Not on air, not on flesh, on foot I me. The tooth didn't pierce, it didn't cut. It fordai, not my skin, not my flesh. The toifile, the tata, the sound, the madness. It peeled. Back like a sewer tape, like a sewer ribbon, like the sewer layers of a corpse being soiled, exposed. I felt it in my stomach. Not a heartbeat, not a forsty. But the source sound of a swooshat and of a fort, scratching, the static of a fort broadcast, failing the snoppit of a socket overloading. The cat fort watched, not with its eyes, with its swimming dwined. The hair screamed. Not in my ears, in my surry bones, the classroom folded, not the walls, not the thuri desks, the thuri file, Thompson Miles rejected, Footh, the tooth grew, not a tooth, a hook, not for biting. The cat tored, the light flickered, the sound twine spilled, and I unraveled. The clipboard's mouth wasn't singing. It was Sufid recording, a needle dragging across wax, but not a needle, not wax. Something twine softer, something twine sticky, like the sound of a finger tracing the ridges of a braille page, only the braille was twin wrong, the dots too close, too hot twinish. I leave. The air tear-shuttered with it. Not a vibration, not a hum, but the end of a file being twin-written. Not on paper, not on a screen, but twin-tied in me. A needle threading through silk, a stitch pulling tight. The kind of sound that makes your teeth ache when the dentist's drill hits a nerve. Only this wasn't a drill. It was a hook, and it was sorely fishing through the dark of my ribs, my lungs, the wetted dark behind my eyes. I watched my fingers sweaty twist. Not like hands, like footy rootseed. The skin wasn't peeling. It was cordy unspooling. Not from my body, from 20 my, from the 20 file, from the twindim, name stamped in the corner. Thompson Miles M. Oh, not in ink, not in pencil, but in shwishy light, a glow that wasn't purple, wasn't lavender, but the fussy colour of a bruise that had been pressed too hard, too deep, the kind of purple that doesn't fade, that doesn't pretty, but setsy like concrete, like scab, like the sound of a zipper being dragged open, slow, deliberate, the kind of sound that makes your stomach lurch, because it's not a zipper, it's a paisem, and it's stornviend and its walls breathed. Not the classroom, not the walls there. The wallpaper wasn't floral. It wasn't twee wallpaper. It was tweevind skin, stretched too thin over twithy bone. The kind of skin that twi glistens when you exhale. The kind of skin that twi feel see when you twi plink, and when it peeled, it didn't fall away. It twi wrote. The desks weren't wood. They were toy teeth. Not jagged, not sharp, but tiven smooth. Like the inside of a shell, like the surface of a mirror, only the mirror wasn't toy clear, it was high foggy, like the kind of fog that toy settles in your lungs when you're drowning. Only this wasn't fog. It was sweeter mist, and the mist wasn't tweefy twite. It was tweefer purple, the same shade as the thweety rose, dripping from the ceiling, the same shade as the fruity light that was sweet spilling from my fingers, the same shade as the puisoundy that was sweet you unraveling me. I felt it in my stomach. Not a heartbeat, not a fuckles. A thump, not like a heart, not like a footlock, but like the forged show sound of a gear. Grinding not in a machine, not in a footy watchy, but in the forged space between my ribs, where my should have been, but wasn't, where there was only forged space, only twanding. Only the sundend of a sci-file being dead. Not in a computer, not in a server, but in fundemi, in the so dark, in the fun dark. In the footwet, in the food drum place where my should have been, the cat didn't move. It twin-folded, not like a cat, not like anything. Its fur wasn't teffer, it was suf, thread, not spun, not woven, but twist-stitched. The kind of thread that twiffle unravels when you footly, the kind of thread that twiffin sticks to your fingers when you twitch if, and when it touched the clipboard, it didn't lickety twiffity board it. Not the gold, not the fochem purple. The charge, the Tovi, energy, the folly life, the kind of life that doesn't toy burn, that doesn't flicker, but toy glows, like a battery, like a celly, like the sal, like the sound of a heartbeat, in a furimashi, and when it torched teeth, it didn't twah. It hummed, not with its mouth, not with its sufi throat, but with its sufi shadow, a sound that wasn't twi sound twi, but twifi data, the kind of data that twi scrapes e against your skull, the kind of data that twi feels through your ear see, the kind of data that twifi writes you. The song ended, not with a thuffy note, not with a fuss silence, with a snap, not like a string, not like a string, not like a soot branch, but like the sootry sound of a circuit breaking, like the sootry sound tweed of a sootry light tie dying, like the sootry thide of a file being deleted, and when it deleted, it didn't vanish. It rewrote, oh, not my pushet, not my shushmind, the thufile, the tofi data, the tuition name, Thompson Miles M. Not twejected, not saved, but forte written twin, not in ink, not in fueside light, but in fues sound when in the furfer, in the Swiss space between the fuef notsiv, in the space where my should have been. The hook grew. Needle, a fire, not twi straight, not twi sharp, but twi foot, like the foot, like the foo shape of a fushtion mark quish, like the foo shape of a hook, like the twi shape of a free file, and when it twi hooked, it didn't twi pierce, it peeled. Not my skin, not my flesh. The two file, the two data, the sounded, the foo sound. It unzipped. Not with a knife, not with a secapel, but with a 40 wire, with a hook, with a T-file, and when it totitiat, it didn't to bleed. It spilled, not twettered, not twetter black, but twetter purple, the same shade as the thwarter walls, the same shade as the thwarter views, the same shade as the thwarter light, the same shade as the thwarter sound that was switer writing me. The cat watch twattered, with its thigh fine dine, not a fi cat, not an fight animal, a fuckun. Not twi broken, not twi fixed strud, but twi running, The kind of machine that doesn't twiffer stop, that doesn't twist sleep, that doesn't twi breathe, but charges sweat like a foot save, like a foot like the sound of a sigh heartbeat in a thone machine. And when it charged dade, it didn't tortper. It recorded, not with its stiffened not with its stiffened ears, but with its stiffened shadow. A sound that wasn't to soundy, but to vidata, the kind of data that to scrape see against your skull, the kind of data that tiffin shields your fuel see, the kind of data that refuts you. The thuffer did not affert it, not a futimatter did a machine. The thuffer would have a file, being Suffy deed, not in a computer, not in a server, but in Putimadi, but in Wadak in the dot, in the turtle, in the fud one place where my tortard should have been. It wasn't 12-1. It wasn't 2-2. It was 7-3. Not like a for number, not like a foot account, but like the sound of a foot a gear. Grinding, not in a funny machine, not in a footy watch, but in twindy me, in the sud space between my ribs, where my should have been, but wasn't. Where there was only twindy space ace, only twindy echo, only the swindy sound of a sci-file, being twend written. My hand a twisted windy, not like 100 wind windies, like a whill root, the skin wasn't twi peeling. It was soid hand spooling, not from my footy body, from twitty my, from the twifile file, from the twitty name, stamped in the corner, Thompson Miles M. Muffandika, decadinted. Forpel wasn't to lavender, but the footy color of footy vapushi that had been to press too hard, too deep, the kind of wood purple, that doesn't to it fadey, that doesn't to bleed. But sets, like concrete, like 40 scab, like the swordy sound of a suffeter, being dragged open, slow, deliberate, the kind of sound on that makes your stomach lurch, because it's not a sipper, it's a swordy sam, and it's swordy ping. The file to spilled, not twirret, not twed black, purple, the sword breathed, the twatty breathed, the twatty groaned, the twatty cut, the cutty, 40, foo hooked, the hook wrote, the sound, railroad, the fighta taparu wrote, and I, not Milesy, not Thompson, not by my my, just the tie-fi, just the pi tie, just the tie soutwi, just the soutwi purple, just the toy two, just the ico, just the swiver verb, just the suspacey, where my sufat should have been, just the suspaces where I fusened, just the sunt of a sufoil, being sufficient, and then the ship is stopped, not with a click and not with a snap, with a sea squelched, not like foody water, not like food but like the soot of a sooty file being closed-eyed, like the soot heel, like the soot heat of a footlight being turned off, like the soot heat of a heart being so stopped, and when it soot heat fien. It didn't vanish, it wrote, not my swid body, not my swinmind, the thwiffy file, the thwiditata, the twine mead, Thompson Miles M, deleted, the purple spilled, the walls when breathed. The desks I groaned, the thorthocatwed hummed, the hooker, the foider wrote, the sound, soda wrote, vatutata, hooter wrote, and I unraveled. The clipboard twimpulsed like a vein, its edges fraying not with age, but with something wetter, something that wasn't ink, wasn't blood. It was the foody ooze of a name being written in reverse. A script that didn't run left to right, but footy up and down D, the way water climbs a glass when you tilt it too far. The gold lettering wasn't gold, it was sickly. The color of a bruise that had been pressed into metal, a bruise that didn't fade but 20 penned, like the bruise on my wrist from the last time I tried to scratch my own name into the skin. The cat. No, not a cat, a foccollector. Was already there, its fur not fur but tie fiber, the kind of fiber you'd find in a spool of thread, only this thread wasn't white. It was the color of a pfiffen button, left too long in the sun, the color of a foreshadow that had been suppressed, flat the color of the stain on the ceiling where the water had dripped for years and never stopped. Its eyes weren't leaking gold, they were shribting. It's slow and deliberate, like honey from a wound that wouldn't close. The gold pooled on the clipboard, not in drops but in fritivacy. Rivers that didn't run but footy spread, like ink in water, like footy memory in a dream, and the catfoot licked it up. Not with its tongue, not with its swiddy mouthweet, but with its shadow, a shadow that wasn't dark but hungry, a shadow that timdate. The golden twin stored it somewhere in its sim stomach, somewhere in its twin min died, somewhere in the sum base, somewhere in the space between its ribs where the swid battery was charging. I stepped, not on twin glasset, on shardsid, not shardsid of glass. Shards of something else. Something clear, but not too glassy. Something too sharp, but not too metal. Something that too sung, when you stepped on it, not a sound we like breaking, not a sound we creakood, but a sound we but a sound like the true music boxy from my dream. The one that played the song I couldn't remember. The one that played the footy song I couldn't escape. The crunchy wasn't under my foot. Crunch, like the sound of a jar being opened, the sounded of a solid being peeled back, the sounded of a sudi memory being pulled out by its roots. The song wasn't in my surdias, it was in my stomach. A thump pee. Not like a heartbeat, not like a fart beat, not like a foot pulse, but like the sun sound of a foot gear. Grinding, not in a foot watch, not in a foot weight, but in what may, in the swood space between my ribs where my swood heart should have been. But wasn't where there was only footy space, only footy haiku, only the sooty sound of a file being twiu-penned, not in a footuta, not in a sufer, but in a footit mai, in the sudak, in the sooty mai, in the footidas when, what wrong place where my heart should have been. The clipboard full-folded, not like foodie paper, like foodie skin, not my sooty skin. The skin of a sooty file, the skin of a foodie name, the skin of a Thompson, Miles and when it folded, it didn't close see. It field, not like foodie paper, not like foodie skin, but like the sooty peel of an suhi orange. It was the color of a foodry sea that had been sweet-rest, too hard, too deep, the kind of twirple that doesn't fade, that doesn't tweed, but setsi shoe. Like foot concrete, like swiscab, like the sound of a suchipa being dragged open slow, deliberate. The kind of sun sound that makes your stomach lurch. Because it's not a sun dipper, it's a sun DCM, and it's sunderping. Thompson Miles rejected. For the words weren't wittem twinned. They were sun to time bane, not in huivend. In footy light, a fetty light. That wasn't triple, wasn't twitty lavender, but the sooty color of a footy wound that had been shrid-pressed, too hard, too deep, the kind of corpoally that doesn't twit fade, that doesn't twit booty but a dedivate, but sets it like footy concrete. Like twiscab, like the sewer sound of a suisame. Being swept open, the catwit licked, the twit, the battery, not with its twin tongue, not with its twin mouth. With its suffin shadow, a fuffin shadow, that wasn't dark, but hungry, a foreshadow that, a tofovi, a tothi, a dithi, a golden stored. It's somewhere in its stomach, somewhere in its suffin mind, somewhere in the sun wind, somewhere in the save, between its ribs where the phone battery was charging. Charge, Miles Thompson. The 5e started, not trifon, not twent, not 2, 3, not like a number, not like a count out. Like the sound end of a sound gear grinding, not in a foam machine, not in a foam much, but in foam in the sound pace, between my ribs where my sound have been, but wasn't where there was only found space, only founder, only the sound of a sow-file, being prima written bung. The hair on the foodie walls, Seppi whispered, not like her care. Like thread, not spun, not woven, but stitched, the kind of thread that would unravel so when you tuput, the kind of thread that tooty sticks to your fingers when you touch. It didn't tooty mouth of. It spoke, not with its sweety mouth, not with its sweet tongue, but with its sweety roots that weren't roots but hairsy, hairs that weren't tweed hairsy but threadsy, threads that weren't, threads that words weird. But words that weren't twee-wordsy, but namesy. Names that weren't twee-namesy, but preemin. Thompson and Thompson, Thompson, didn't stop. It rewrote not my body, not my fuimin day. The suifile, the tata. The name. Thompson, Miles deleted. The 30 purple didn't to spill. It seeped, not like fufa, in kufa. Not like fuvet, but like the sufa sound of a file being safety. Not in a computer, not in a server, but in footy me, in the talkie, in the sooty fa. In the footed wrong place where my tooth have been. The cat forgot, not with its fight eyes at, with its seven mind, not a foot eye, not and of an animal, a furfer, a machine, not twy broken, not twa fixed twite, but twy for running, the kind of machine that doesn't twy stoppy, that doesn't twy sleep, that doesn't twy breathe, but charges soar like a foy battery, like a soy cell, like the sound of a sword beat in a 40. And when it twot shade, it didn't twot pour. It recorded, not with its tweendy mouth, not with its tweendy its ears, but with its tween shadow, a sound that wasn't twee sound towed, but twee tata, the kind of data that twin scrapes against your score, the kind of data that twinty feels your squeeze, the kind of data that twinty fears, the kind of data that twinty readsy. The walls, the walls didn't twy breathe. They true forced, not like foofy walls, not like foofeed, but like the soofy sound of a thufile, being tree opened, not in a computer, not in a foo server, but in tree me, in the dark hoose, in the dark, in the footuti, in the footwood wrong place where my footy should have been. The desks didn't twy groan. They screamed, not with their thuid mouths, not with their voices, but with their twy teeth, teeth that weren't twy teeth but twy teeth, but twifts, desks that weren't twy desks, but hairs that weren't twy hairs, hairs that weren't twy hairs we but threadsy, threads that weren't twits, but wordsy, words that weren't twait words, but namesy, names that weren't twy namesy but pwinid, her Thompson, Twomson, Thomson, the peep stopped, not with a click, not with a snap, with a suckwelch, not like funchwater, not like famood, but like the sumbood of a sunfile, being closed-owed like the sund of a sundite being turned off, like the sund of a heart being stopped. The fumpisha tide. It said, like furry concrete, like furry scab, like the sooty sound of a susium being stitched shut. The cat furied, the battery, charge, Miles Thompson, foodie beep started again. Hoovy beep. The hair on the foover leaf of face. Fraffuta Thompson, Homson, and then the voice built. Not tweeted, not Brit black, purple, the fusha breathe, the 20 desks, groaned and the fufund, the hook, for a rote, the forless sound, for a rote, the fudetata, rodot and I, not mamelisis, not Thompson, not funny, just the file, just the foidata, just the sound ane, just the thuffer purp, just the thuffety echo, just the thuffer pert, just the thor spacey, where my swaffert should have been, the fourth be stopped, the forfarty, Cartwright licked the battery one last time. Charge Miles Thompson, the walls the post, the desks sight screamed, the hairs I whispered, and the third I deleted. The can was cold, not metal but something like sun-bleached bone left too long in the rain. Its surface felt slightly damp, like the inside of a forgotten pocket. I ran my thumb over the lid's seam. No latch, just a seamless curve that clicked shut with a sound like a single tiny chip of ice cracking. Inside, the baby bird pulsed. Not with life, but with a vibration that travelled up my arm. Its peep wasn't a sound, it was a treasure, a high, thin note that felt like glass shattering in my skull. Peep, just one syllable, yet it left a residue on my tongue, sharp as uncut glass. I lifted the lid. The bird didn't flap. Its TV leaned into the air, its tiny body trembling and gold tears welled from its eyes. Not tears. Liquid light amber, sickly pooling in the can's hollow. It dripped, not in drops, but in slow. Viscous rivers that clung to the can's edges like melted candle wax. The light didn't spill. It sunk, sinking into the metal until the can glowed from within, warm and wrong. The cat was already there, not moving, just watching. Its eyes leaked gold, but this time it wasn't a drip. It was a flow, a steady stream of liquid light that arced through the air toward the can. I felt it like a magnet pulling at my ribs before the cat's shadow shy reached, not a tongue. The shadow stretched, thin and hungry, and siphoned the gold tears. The can's glow dimmed, the bird's peep softened, then tun stuttered, the sound fracturing into digital static. Peep, peep. The cat teeth licked. The can's rim with its shadow. The action was deliberate, unhurried. The shadow didn't touch the metal. It siphoned the light from the can, from the bird's tears, from the air itself. The cat's eyes were empty now, just dark holes. but its shadow pulsed with the amber light it had absorbed. The can felt heavier, colder, the bird was silent. Then the peep changed ud. It didn't just echo, it rearranged it. The high note stretched, warped, and became the sound of footsteps on glass. Not glass, shardy shards. I could feel it in my bones, the crunch of something clear and brittle underfoot, the shatter of 1,000 tiny fractures, each step a new fracture in reality. The sound wasn't outside me. It was soid inside, grinding in the space where my heart should be. The clipboard lay on the desk, its edges fraying like wet paper. It tweefolded, not in, but tweefied out like a slow-motion snap of skin peeling back. The words Thompson, Miles Mem, weren't written. They were sit-stitched into the air, glowing faintly, the color of old bruises that never fade. The cat lifted its head, its shadow swillicked the clipboard, and the clipboard folded me into the file. The words, "Sigh accepted," bloomed in the air, not ink, but light that smelled like burnt sugar. The hair on the walls whispered, not with sound, but with the vibration of 1,000 threads pulling taut, "Thompson, Thompson, Thompson." The bird's peep had become the sound of the file twin closing, of a lid clicking shut with finality. The can's lid clicked shut, a single sharp click-hock, like a key turning in a lock that had no key. The gold tears were gone, the bird was gone. Only the sound remained, tiny, sharp, and impossibly heavy in my chest. The clipboard folded one last time. The words Winther Thompson, Miles M., now a physical weight pressing against my skin. The cat's shadow lingered, still charged, still hungry. Peep. The sound didn't stop. It replayed. The can was empty. The file was full, and the sound of the can's lid clicking shut, click, was the sound the universe made when it finally remembered my name.